Hey folks, welcome back to episode 2 of WTF happened. This is me and Paras discussing about technology, society, economy. Like we had mentioned last time, this is basically what we typically discuss on a Friday evening, but we decided to record it so that we can also share this knowledge with you, get your feedback, and sort of build a community around it. So Paras, how have you been doing and what's happened in your life this week?
Lots of stuff. This week has been a little bit on the edge. Been building the new thing and pre-product market fit. Every day is a new thing to experiment. It is sort of like a sine wave. When something works well, you're on the top of the world. But if it doesn't, you feel like what the F is happening. So yeah, so work has been pretty intense this week, but at the same time I started working out 5 days a week, so 3 days lifting weights, 2 days MMA, and at the same time I started meditating 45 minutes per day, so really stretching myself. And I think that's showing up in how I feel, which is completely exhausted by Friday. What about you, Pallav? How has the week been for you?
This week, so most of my week is slightly unstructured right now because I'm not working on anything full time. So this week has been a lot of learning on the what's happening in the Gen AI space. Then second part of the week has been helping some of my portfolio companies and companies that I advise. So in that sense, a lot of learnings, some spectacular learnings on how deep SEO can go and how effective it can be. In fact, I heard from a friend's friend who's running a company that just because of SEO, he's being able to add $1 million per quarter in revenue. And when you start looking at those tips and tricks, it goes very wide and very deep. Didn't even know the word spam score for a website, which I recently got to know. So this in context of helping those companies, and also in context of trying to understand what AI is happening, hosted a small informal meetup of like-minded people at my place.
Yeah,
Couple
I
of days
noticed
ago.
that, and you didn't invite me.
You're a busy guy, Paris, and this
Yeah.
was in the middle of the week.
Yeah, don't assume next time.
Absolutely.
I don't
Yeah,
want to
so that was
get
good.
pictures of your meetup on a WhatsApp and where I'm not there.
Oh, sure, sure. Yeah, so good thing was there's a lot of interest in this, and a lot of people are still figuring out. And I found two different spectrums of people. One who are very deep into it, been implementing, and some also like ML engineers or data scientists who are actually even looking at optimizing models. And on the other end, there are founders who've just started implementing or thinking about it. So I think it's an interesting stage in this journey of this new technology, and everybody is sort of curious on how this will work and
Yeah,
what impact could it have on them.
I think on the latter, recently I read a thread on machine learning subreddit where people are going through existential crisis, especially data scientists, because a lot of their custom-made models are suddenly obsolete because of these general models. And people have, in fact, I don't know whether it was a troll or not, but someone said they're feeling suicidal because they've nothing, like whatever work they've done for the last 4 years is just not relevant anymore. I think it's more so in research groups where people, if they've done very specific research on, say, segmentation, and now Facebook comes along and releases segment anything model, which is just so good and does so many things. So the same thing, what really is happening. And in fact, it's surprising. Data scientists are the first ones to feel obsolete, becoming obsolete, which was surprising because it was so much in rage. Everyone wanted to be data scientist, machine learning engineer, and now a model is doing whatever you had to do for the last many years.
Right, but only don't you think some of those skills are transferable? Because this week, once I share my screen, but one of the things which I started doing this week was while till last week I was trying to figure out the applications of generative AI and what all is happening. This week I got curious on how does it really work, and I started reading a lot of depth on. Still on the surface, started trying to understand the depth of what happens in neural networks. How do you sort of fine tune a model? What happens with weights? How do you build your own transformers? So a lot of this is a lot of maths, which is statistics, calculus, computing concepts, engineering concepts. So I'm assuming the ML engineers and data scientists, they already possess a deep expertise in that. I'm assuming those skills would be transferable when they try to fine tune some of these AI models or adapt these to their businesses or internal repos of knowledge. What do you think about that?
No, that's what I'm saying. The general models work way better than specialized models at many tasks. So you really don't have to know internals. And research universities, OpenAI, Facebook, and all these companies are releasing these general models. which works so much better. So, and I think that will be the trend, the whole trend of progressing towards AGI, which is literally artificial general intelligence. If you, as a business person, have access to it and it does so many things so well, then why do you have to really know the internals? And if you know the internals, even there is a significant competition from research labs. So,
Right.
I mean, what do you specialize in is becoming increasingly difficult. I think that's again one of the things we should talk about. What does specialization look like for future? What should I've been thinking, what should kids today who are entering into college or into high school really specialize in? It's, I think, very, very hard to say.
Right. I mean, on that, I think the most important thing is the adaptability to learn. I mean, when Gen AI started, before that, we thought that AI will first start with blue collar jobs, but suddenly it started with the whitest of the white collar jobs, artists. It started with musicians. It started with programmers. Started with data scientists, and all of those. Wherever there was knowledge repository, and it can sort of generate from information to knowledge. So yeah, and now, like if I look at it, and the question which I was asking myself actually a couple of months ago, actually, rather. So it's been about 10 years, more than 10 years since I actively programmed for a production level code. I was like, hey, now that I have time, let me get back to it. So I picked up Python, I picked up a couple of front end JavaScript frameworks as well to be able to do. But more and more, I'm thinking that, hey, the smaller parts of these applications can be coded by, eventually can be coded by generative AI. But for the plumbing, for the architecture, you still need these core engineering concepts, computer science concepts, and to be able to sort of, even if we talk about just chaining them together, building an efficient system. Because a lot of the LLMs will still look great in demos, but the moment you throw them in production, there's variability issue, consistency issue, non-deterministic outputs. So at some point in time, the underlying plumbing will still require computer science to an extent. What do
Yeah,
you
for
think?
now, for now, maybe for next 6 months, 12 months. I'm not being hopeless, but I think more important than seeing what are the flaws, and obviously LLMs have flaws right now, but the trajectory that they are on, that is more insightful for me on what can happen. So even if no architecture, LLMs cannot write architecture, they fail at the last mile problems, but it's a matter of time. Things will get fixed one by one. I mean, 2 years ago we felt what we are seeing today is impossible. So, and I felt as an individual, that's what I was thinking yesterday, that what should be one's attitude towards AI. I felt as an individual, I think the only attitude that makes rational sense is to be optimistic,
Mhm.
um, because this thing is not stopping. And if you have no influence over what's not stopping, then you ought to have an optimistic attitude, because pessimism simply will push you even further behind, right? So I am willing to embrace it with full of my heart and full of my mind, um, because there's just no other option. But I think when you talk about other entities, like geopolitical entities like governments and big organizations, they ought to have a different attitude, because they have a power to really think in and influence a broad direction of future. uh,
Right.
so confusing what your attitude should be with what like a government's attitude needs to be, or if Elon Musk is signing something, should you be against AI? I think that is a little bit confused stance.
Right. So I think this is a great topic that you have brought up. So one thing is, like, if you look at some countries like China, they have already put the regulations around what generative AI can do. So it can't
Oh, is
spit
it? I
out
didn't
things which
know
are,
that.
yeah,
What
this
have they said?
happened, I think. So they said anything which is against our social idealism, socialistic idealisms, generative AI can't do that. And they put, so actually they put like fairly restrictive policies, anything which goes against their ideologies, and they put up a couple more pointers around that. UK is also considering. US, obviously, there's been a big debate on should there be a pause on AI, training of new models and everything. Some people are saying, hey, it's just a way for people who are slightly behind the curve to catch up with the 6 month pause. But when OpenAI also, like Sam Altman says that, yeah, we should consider it. Uh, the counterpoint to that is, hey, even if you stop one organ in one country, it's like sort of an arms race. Other countries who are still sort of behind this, they may, or who non-state actors or bad actors will continue pushing the boundaries on top of this. So right now, the only way to sort of, so one thing is, again, this, if you stop this innovation, it is just going to delay the inevitable. Eventually, everybody will be pushing
I
forward.
think
Be
I
the
think it'll just go underground. Just like governments have not been able to ban piracy. Pirate Bay exists. People still download torrents. Similarly, Bitcoin still exists. People
Right.
use Bitcoin. Similarly, if you do anything about AI now, that with Llama and other client side LLMs and models, the bad actors or people who don't want to go by the law, they're not going to get stopped. And
Absolutely.
yeah, even recently I was reading where someone used LLMs to propose and synthesize new molecules. And though some of those new molecules can in fact be dangerous from a bioweapon capability. I mean, you can't, if you have all that, then you cannot stop it. I mean, Llama already might have all this information encoding in itself, right?
Right. So I think, like, let's say couple of decades earlier, the government created regulations around cloning, like the banned cloning and some of these biomolecular structures. And the industry bodies self-organized to be able to do it. So there's a big debate going on: should industry self-regulate it, or should the government step in? And even if you step in as a government, what exactly are you regulating? Are you saying, hey, nobody gets access to a GPU or a TPU to train this? Are you saying you can't fine-tune existing models further? Are you saying you can't throw in new corpus of data?
Yeah.
And for what joy? And would that actually stifle innovation, and or will it put it underground? Those are open questions, and I don't think anybody has an idea. And to add on top of that, I think most researchers, or probably all researchers, if I'm right, still do not understand how internally GPT-4 or the newer versions which are in progress are able to sort of do reasoning or inferences, or what emergent properties are
Yeah.
coming out of it.
I
So
mean, that to me is a fascinating thing, that GPT is taking over the world, but nobody has a fucking clue how it works. What is that magic that happens when you multiply matrices that such amazing things comes out? To me, that is a very, very interesting theoretical curiosity. And hopefully, I think by studying these models, we'll get to know about the nature of intelligence. But coming back to your point on, say, banning genetic engineering or limiting it, I mean, that worked because people didn't have access to all the equipment. And now every gamer has a GPU, and you can't stop that. All you have to do is download models and get hacking away. I don't see banning and regulation being very, very effective. If people download torrents, movies from torrents, people will download weights, and then they can
right.
do whatever they want to do with those weights, including fine tuning. They have GPUs, they have everything at their disposal. Of course, the very, very large models will be difficult, but that's the beauty of research, right? If you've seen Llama, how it's gone from nobody being able to run to now you can run it even on Android phone with whole 4-bit quantization. So research is advancing towards very fast client side
Right.
models.
Also, on the very large models, Imad, the founder of Stability, in one of his podcasts, he made an interesting point. If a bad state actor wants to do a very large model, he doesn't need all the GPUs. He just needs a flash drive inside OpenAI's premises somehow, and just to copy the weights. That's your starting point. He had made this point in one of the interviews. So
Yeah,
essentially, if
yeah.
you look at all the computation and all the RHLF is done by humans over months, but the end output is those parameters and the weights. If you start with those weights, if somebody gets access to those, especially from a closed model, it might be possible to build on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about that. I think Windows source code got leaked, right? But nothing really happened. Windows, Microsoft is still the big one. And I mean, in that sense, OpenAI is not just about models, but I think their moat is also about serving this really, really fast, uh,
Sure.
very cheaply, and continuing to sort of improve the weights. So I'm not sure there. I mean, of course, I think I'm waiting for the first big leak to happen. I think it's inevitable. Some
Mhm.
closed source weight is going to get leaked, but I think more than weights, what will be super useful for community is all the information of how, say, something like GPT-4 is structured. Because in their paper they released nothing. They didn't release the number of parameters. They didn't release the number of layers, amount of data. All of that was hidden in their paper for so-called safety reasons. And I think once it goes out, the community will most likely benefit by knowing what really works, what is creating that delta from GPT 3.5 to 4.
Right. No, on the weights, I was just making a cheeky point that if a bad actor gets access to those weights, you can remove the guardrails put by existing organizations, and that becomes more potent from a ethics standpoint, or from the power of, or the bad usage of that models. But
Yeah,
anyway, sort of
yeah.
switching topics. So shall we talk about what all we have learned this week or looked at this week, or what do you
Sure,
want to
we
do?
can do that. Do you want to go first?
Sure. So let me start with this one. Can you see my ChatGPT? How does it work? Screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Although
So
I think
the
maybe you'll have to zoom in a little bit.
Sure. So the prelude to this was basically, like I had mentioned, that till last week I was mostly trying to figure out, hey, what are the applications and everything, and then I got curious about, hey, can I get sense of how it's working? And then I came across this article of Stephen Wolfram. Again, I've not been into ML and data science, so a bunch of these concepts were new for me. But essentially, what uh, ChatGPT does is it's a stochastic or a probabilistic model trained on billions of words and parameters to be able to say what it can predict. And internally, essentially, it's using neural networks and a bunch of algorithms with a lot of data and compute to do. So it's a fairly long and deep article, but a good article for a beginner like me to understand at the surface level what are the things go inside it. So like where do the probabilities come from? Like how is it calculated? How does like a simple example, like if you look at this particular part, the probability of any word, any character after Q is zero because Q is always succeeded by U in English language. So these are some of the cohort maps and obviously the Voronoi maps that they make. And this describes a little bit about how modeling works. How do you sort of model for human type tasks? What happens with different kind of neural networks? How it was created? So fairly deep. I mean, if somebody wants to
I think you should,
get
if you're interested, you should start with the classic paper, Attention is All You Need. That is the
that
paper
comes
which started the entire thing. And it's fairly easy to understand. I think I'm sure you may have gone through it, but if you're
I
interested,
have.
Kaparthi's Let's Code a Neural Network. I think,
In fact, that was my, this
yeah.
one was another one. So this was, let's build GPT from scratch and spelled out. So he basically takes a corpus of all Shakespearean work, which is about 1 MB of text data, and he builds his own, I think about 600 lines of Python code using PyTorch, and builds a transformer to be able to spit out newer Shakespearean work. Some of those are interesting, some not so much, obviously. But this also gives a sense of like how things are shaping up inside ChatGPT or GPT for that. What is a transformer? How do you tokenize? How do you create those chunks? How do you create those embeddings? This is good if you're interested and you have some understanding of Python, PyTorch. So I've still not fully internalized it. Haven't sort of made modifications on it, but this was a good starting point for me to be able to get a sense of what's happening inside. And what got me excited, I mean, this week, excited and also sort of tired was just the amount of things happening in this space. Like, this is just a list of all the LLMs which are public right now. And this is decentralized LLMs. Some of those are obviously uh, vertical specific, but a whole bunch of these are like open source, which can use. And the space at which is it's progressing, it's just exhausting to catch up with it. Even for an unemployed guy like me, spending most of my time trying to figure out what's happening. So there's a new one which is
Yeah, but
Vicuna.
I think you should rest assured that this anxiety is shared by everyone. So nobody knows entirely what's happening. It's just so, I mean, it's so spread out, the whole buzz of activity. I don't think anyone is really catching up with everything that's happening. And I think that's comforting somehow that,
Yeah. So I was reading a article where a person interviewed like a whole bunch of enthusiasts or tinkerers in the space, and basically got three sets of responses on how people are catching up with one. So what's happening in the world? One set of response was, "Hey, I'm not looking into it actively. Give it 6 months. There's consolidation which is going to happen, which is inevitable. Then whoever wins, I'm going to start using with that." The other guy said, the other set is basically, "Hey, I'm keeping a track of most of these things, but right now I'm not implementing, apart from things which my business process calls for, in which case I just pick whatever is state of the art or SOTA." The problem is what was SOTA 2 weeks ago is not SOTA anymore, which is rare. The speed of development is rare. And the third set was like, "Hey, I'm a tinkerer. Anything new which comes, I sort of look at it, build a few things on top of it. And essentially, I look at the delta from what happened in the previous version of that or the previous implementation from another source out of that." But yeah, the pace is really, really, really fast. And the problem is, at least for a person like, not problem, I mean, also the opportunity and the excitement is for a person like me who hasn't come from an ML and data science background, every new topic opens a rabbit hole. So when I was looking at how ChatGPT works, now I have to understand neural networks, then I have to understand how machine learning works, and then I have to understand calculus. And basically from each topic, you go to another one. It's
So
pretty exciting in that sense to
are you
to
just
be able to
following your
learn.
curiosity, or are you working with a specific agenda?
Right now, following curiosity. So the agenda is to discover agenda first on where do I want to apply it, but primarily to be able to say, hey,
This,
can I understand this well enough to be able to figure out both the nuances for the fun part of it and also the implications of it on how it could be used while having an understanding of how it works internally.
yeah, this reminded me of AutoGPT, which we'll probably talk about, where the first task that's given to the GPT is to make a to-do list. That's exactly what you're
Yes.
doing. Step one
So
is to figure out step one.
right. So I think we can jump to that one, or a GPT. So this is wait, yeah. So this is so let's start with Auto GPT. So basically, for folks who do not know, Auto GPT is basically using GPT to create autonomous agents, which you give a goal and it creates sub goals within itself or tasks, and then it uses GPT itself to sort of keep looping on those tasks unless it gets an out till it gets an outcome, and then it basically analyzes the output and improves on top of it. And essentially, you deploy an autonomous agent, you give it a goal, it does all of that. Obviously, there are some issues with guardrails and continuous loops which are happening, but some of the examples which people have done are like business development bot, where you can figure out your product ICP, and these are the subtasks which the Auto GPT agent creates. Similarly, customer service bots for simple customer service, research bots for market research studies or pricing. They're not perfect yet, but at a high level, it's like changing user experience presets, like your flows or journeys can be automated to a large extent. It could create new product categories all over. Like now, you can have agents which do specific tasks as part of your product, or it can augment that. And this started as Baby AGI, and then Auto GPT. That there's Camel right
Yeah,
now.
so
Like
yeah,
every
there's a lot of buzzwords there, but I have a tab open.
sure,
When I
I
come to
will just
what I learned, I will explain that.
right. So this was one interesting thing, and the second interesting thing which I found this week was like when Stanford and I think MIT researchers or Facebook researchers, they basically they created this what is called generative agents. So they gave this agents sort of a human nature like the Sims game, and they created the simulation like the Sims. And at the end of tea time, I don't remember exactly what was happening. These agents started behaving like humans. They started showing human behavior. So some of the things like so this was uh like wait, let me just pull up that one.
Dude, how are you
So
talking about the same links that I wanted to talk about?
I think we are both following the same links in the same course. So
Yeah.
here basically this was a simulation link and they could memorize and recall. Some of those could reflect on those observations, which is very human like. Obviously there was a reflect sort of function as well, and they could build on top of their past memories and their state, and they were able to build your experience. So basically, if you look at this, Isabella starts the day with a plan to host Valentine's Day. She automatically spreads the word, and 12 characters know about the party. This was not the instruction set which was fed to this generative agents. They're automatically figuring this out. Then they're enabling that. Then based on that, there's human-like responses. Then they're doing the state management like human does, which is continuation of conversations. So this is pretty interesting on how generative agents can behave like humans, and the implications of this could be very interesting when you want to create human-like bots or human-like interfaces through machines for a whole bunch of interaction points which humans do with software or call centers today. Yeah, so this was an interesting thing which I found this week. And the paper for this is Generative Agents, Interactive Simulacra of Human Behavior. Pretty interesting paper to read and how they have created these agents. The next thing I discovered, this is something which has actually been for a while, but music ML. So this basically helps you create instrumental generative music. I think this has been there for 3 months. 3 months is like a yawn in AI space right now. So basically, if you give it like the main soundtrack of an arcade game, it is fast-paced and upbeat with a catchy electric guitar riff. Music is repetitive. It generates the music like this.
I think the sound is not coming through.
Okay, if the sound did not come through, just go
Maybe
to this page here.
you can link this
I will link all
in
of
the
this.
description. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the paper for this, again, all on archive. By the way, recently learned this is not Arxiv, this is archive. That's how people call it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was most of the things. And then I started looking at what are the applications of this and came across this interesting company because everybody has been saying, hey, how do we get our internal corporate knowledge on top of GPT to be able to sort of search across that, keeping in mind that we don't want to share this data with anybody outside the organization, keeping in mind that which person in an organization has access to what data, what records, what files and documents. So Glean is a company founded by some ex Google and like very like high credo people if you go here. And yeah, I think he was at Google Search and then Rubrik, all of like very, very established people who created and founded this. And a bunch of companies are doing in this space where they're saying, hey, either we allow you a chatbot on top of your website content or knowledge base or enterprise search. And I think Microsoft has also released their own infrastructure called Microsoft Cognitive Search and Azure APIs for any enterprise to train. It'll be fun to see how the space grows and how adoption of this will happen. But search within an organization was always a problem, and especially if you can add the search and then automatically run some of the workflows, which is very common in organization but takes time. That will be useful. Another interesting thing I saw is now Bing has started introducing ads in their GPT output, the Bing Chat GPT output.
Yeah, so I
Big...
read this was right there from the start. People are just noticing now. But
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay,
ads.
I noticed it recently because of so still using Google and mostly ChatGPT for finding better information, given how spammy Google has become of late.
Yeah, I don't have access to it. Do you have access to Bing Chat?
Bing Chat, no, I don't
Yeah.
yet. Yeah, that and some fun anecdotes. So somebody was saying that while ChatGPT has passed a bunch of exams in US, in India's JEE entrance, JEE entrance, which is for I think IIT, it could only answer 11 questions correctly. So there was a lot of debate in some of the WhatsApp groups, like why is it happening, or should we build an India-specific LLM with all the local data and everything? But at a high level, my question was, is JEE really so tough? Have you given JEE Paras ever?
I think I did. Yeah, I didn't get through. I hadn't
Yeah, yeah.
I hadn't prepared at all. I was very happy-go-lucky. So the idea was to drop 1 year after 12th and prepare for it. But yeah, I got into DC and I thought, what the hell? Let's just go with it.
Closer home at least.
Yeah, closer to home. Yeah, it was literally 10 minutes away from my home.
Right. And
Yeah,
then
and
last I was, sorry.
no, I was saying, and the fees was very low. I remember paying 10,000 rupees per year, and now I hear even for IITs. I was talking to a friend yesterday. IITs fees has gone up to rupees 10 lakhs for the entire course, and that's because the government has. He was saying government has stopped funding IITs, existing IITs, to focus on new IITs. And he made a very interesting thing that middle class people and lower class, they are the most they are most driven to get into these because that's a ticket to rising up in social strata, and loading them up with 10 lakhs of debt right when they're getting out and when they're 21. I think that's a big deal. And they'll be repaying loans for years and years. And 21 to 30 is the prime years for taking risks. So he's talking about now IITs are being forced to rely on donations from their alma mater. And otherwise, these folks, it's just an anecdote because I remember getting all my education in less than 50,000 rupees. And now people spend, 10, 15 lakhs for their education. That's crazy.
So I have two counterpoints on that. Like a ticket, once you get into IIT, by default, you land at a fairly decent place. And at least for the top, I don't know if it's decile or quartile, we're talking about very big numbers. So loan to repayment for those people, if you perform well, should not be a problem just looking at the data. Second, if you compare Indian universities to US universities, there we're talking about $30,000, $40,000 minimum per year. Compared to that, it's still fairly cheap here, about let's say at $12,000 a year. So, and third,
Yeah,
like
but we don't have to. I mean, American higher education is not, at least when it comes to the amount of money people have to pay, not worth emulating. I think there are better examples out there, perhaps Singapore, China, East Asian countries, right, where the focus on education means, and even Nordic countries, like you go to Germany, you go to Norway, most of the higher education is free. And if India is to grow, I think, again, we're going to a tangent, but I don't agree loading up people, at least in these premier institutes where people are coming because of their merit. Yeah, I think we
So
absolutely,
it's
because I mean those are the prime years of taking risks. Will these people be doing startups if they have a 10 lakh rupee loan on their shoulders? Will they be experimenting with new research? Will they at least try to go for a PhD and do something breakthrough? I think that debt when you're so young, it just means you have to get a job and you can think everything else after that job.
So let's pull a tangent on this tangent, Paras. Given that the world is changing so fast in terms of like anything which is mostly taught in our typical engineering colleges road by the time you're already out of it, or even by the time you're in the college. And given that the world is changing so fast, is there even a role of formal education with service people learning online? Like once you're out of college and you're in the job, anyways, you have to learn new things on your own. So why even then bother with something like, hey, 4 years of degree if today the reason people do that because you get placements and employers are looking at, hey, where have you come from? But I'm assuming merit versus certification, at least in startups, have never been an issue. I mean, you're not just hiring a guy because he's from IT. You're saying, hey, what have you done? And even if the guy is not from IT or even probably not studied but has built some interesting projects or published some open source
Yeah.
published open source modules or projects or research papers, does it even matter in that sense?
Yeah, that's why I'm very strong on apprenticeship model. So in Germany, apprenticeship is a really big deal. After high school, kids start working directly and learn on the job. I think that's where we need to go. The high school students of this day and age are much more caught up with what's happening versus probably when we were in high school, just because the information keeps on exploding, right? The social networks are dense and information keeps on coming in a much faster fashion than it did for us. So in that sense, I would imagine going deep into apprenticeship, having high school students directly work with startups and forming bonds in teams is way better than spending 4 years. I mean, for me, already by our time, also college was mostly about having fun and making good social relationships. I don't recall having very good education, unfortunately. And I'm being honest here. My college was a really prestigious one, but let's face it, the quality of education, apart from the top, say 10, 20, 30, 40 universities in the world, is not that great. So I mostly derived a lot of value from social relationships, and I mostly tinkered on my own, on my projects and my startups, and all that can happen even without going to college. And I think that's where the world should go.
Right. I mean, I can say the same about me. My 1 year in UK when I was doing masters in computer science, I probably learned more about how to live life independently, cooking on your own, cleaning your own rooms, and using a map to travel different cities. This is pre Google Map days. Obviously, I learned things in tech, but because I was a coder back then, the new things which I learned in life, that was way more important, and that stuck with me. And also the social circles. I think a lot more social circles can now be developed across interest areas. So, anyways, half of your life is online in terms of social, and then there are different meetups or different groups which are there when they come together for a purpose or for a cause. So,
Yeah.
bunch of that social life can be done around that as well.
Yeah, I
So,
think there's a
anyways,
startup waiting to happen in this area, which disrupts meetup, because the physical meetups where you get people together who are interested in the same thing, uh, I think it's still to be cracked, but it's more and more important, given how verticalized our interests have become. Right, we are less about our local geography now. I wouldn't know who's living in my neighborhood, but I know who's very interested in AI, and I want to form that vertical group instead of this horizontal local group.
I think a bunch of interest-based social networks had come. I don't know what happened to them. And for meetups, there's obviously meetups.com, but yeah, definitely there's an opportunity. Currently, most of that is done through WhatsApp groups, and which is why everybody has probably more WhatsApp groups than contacts on their phone right now.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'm sharing this. Sorry, I'm sharing, making you the host. Why don't you share what you have learned this week?
Yeah, I mean, you already talked about few of the things. You have to give me hosting permissions, then
Yes,
I'll share a few things.
just it.
Got it. Yeah. So my go-to thing is always Hacker News, and that's what I mean, the first one was this, uh, but I think the curious thing about this is I was wondering, how soon will we start forgetting that these are artificial agents? And is that even a valid question? Wherein, I mean, these folks, I mean, if you read the paper, you'll understand this is a very persuasive title, simulacra of human behavior, which means if there was if there are 15 agents in this real world, and out of those 15, one was human, would you be able to tell? And the whole point of the paper is that you won't be able to tell, because these agents have memories, these have experiences, they talk, they reflect, even though it's in the game world. But these agents have everything that a human has, right? And for another human, at least in digital world, all you have access to is the information they are giving. It might be words, it might be images, it might be video. But if all you have access to it, then where do you draw the line? What's an agent and what's a human? And if you can't draw the line, I'm pretty sure there would be a group of people who would start arguing for rights for these agents. Because crazy
Right.
things have happened in the past, and this is probably not that crazy, because if you can't tell two things apart there, if it quacks like a duck, walks like a duck, it is a duck, right? And it also asks, I mean, it begs the philosophical question: how can you also prove that you are a human, you have consciousness, you are a zombie? So this is very fascinating to me, because all I can rely on is asking Pallav and hearing his words. And if an agent is doing the same, why really become dead set and say that these are fake, these are NPCs, and we are real folks? So I'm waiting
Right.
for
So,
this debate to evolve, and very excited to see where it goes, because I'm a panpsychist in a loose sense, where I feel consciousness is everywhere. So I'm more sympathetic to the thought that there could be something going on in these agents, where it could be some sense of a feeling. And if that's the case, the whole question of morality comes, where is it moral if you get them to do a task which you wouldn't do yourself?
towards the agent. Okay, but the reverse use cases of these are have been pretty interesting. So somebody has already fallen in love with a bot. I was reading it somewhere. Don't remember the source. Somebody took their sort of Facebook Messenger group with friends and trained a model on over 500,000 conversations. And next time when they asked a question, it almost simulated the friend's behavior back to that. A couple of days ago, I met a founder of Sathi.com, where they're using agents, using NLP and actually voice to get delinquent loans collected from -5 days to 50 days. And they've trained the agent on about 354 different personalities. And the agent learns from past behavior. And he was saying some interesting anecdotes from the conversation. The agent knows with whom to deal in a harsher tone. So, for example, if you're a person who was not paid for last 2 times, and each time we call you, you say ki health problem tha. Third time, you will by default deal in a harsher tone. This is somebody who has always paid, and you say health problem tha, you have a sympathetic tone to it, and all of this through agents itself. And the guy's been doing it for a fairly decent amount of time through a
Yeah.
combination of obviously
I
NLP,
think,
generative AI, and
yeah, I think what's
all of
also
that.
going to happen is people are going to immortalize themselves and their loved ones. Where if you have the chat history of your friend and maybe their images, maybe some videos, photos, I think I see this whole digital immortality, where of course the person will die, but the persona will remain. And I was reading a Hacker News comment where the person said he was talking to his wife about whether they want to immortalize each other, and they said that something about that didn't feel right, and they decided against it. But it's inevitable. It's inevitable. You'll export your WhatsApp chat, and I'm pretty sure somebody must be working on it. You export your WhatsApp chat, and there comes Pallav bot, who can talk to you non-stop 24 hours, even when Pallav is not around. And how do you feel about it? I mean, I'm a bit creeped out by the thought of people living forever, at least for you.
But would you say that's living forever? Because humans keep on evolving. So what Pallav was 3 years ago, or forget 3 years, 1 year ago, I have changed a bit. Now, if you create that corpus of data, while you may be able to answer the questions from my past, but the evolution of that person never
Yeah,
happened. So
but
you
I'm
haven't
saying
really
if,
immortal.
let's say, if the person is no more, would you want to
Hmm.
keep their digital persona as a memory? I mean, people keep photos, but would you want to keep their chatbot to chat whenever you're not feeling good or you're remembering them?
Okay, so let's look at it from both perspectives. Why not? Let's say if you are able to talk to that person and that person lives in your memory and the physical manifestation has sort of been washed away, uh, the the plus side is at any point when you're feeling low or you're missing them, you have the ability to sort of get some sense of comfort. The negative point is you're never letting go of that person.
Yeah.
But let's say from a society's perspective or the adaptation perspective of human, if that becomes the default thing, like think about it, like humans, we have adapted our behaviors based on what society and technology has done. So if that becomes the default behavior itself, that hey, nobody dies forever, they just physically get washed away, but their avatars remain forever. Society will adapt to that. Our
Yeah.
behavior will adapt to that.
I think
So
we are not prepared for the emotions we are going to feel because of this. I don't think we even have words for the emotions that
maybe our
we're going to
generation.
feel in 5 years down the line, 2 years down the line. All these things are, I mean, we can't say whether it's grief or not grief. I mean, just like when we were growing up, we had no clue something like TikTok can exist, no clue something like Twitter can exist, or you'll be chatting live on Zoom in a real time. I think similarly, we have no clue. And this to me is very important because this means new dimensions of human experience are opening up. We don't even have words to describe what's happening, right?
Right. So I read somewhere that every newer generation's technology seems dystopian to the previous generation.
Yeah.
Like if you look at our fathers, they're still more comfortable calling. We are more comfortable texting. The younger generation probably is more comfortable doing either TikTok or Discord or whatever their form of communication is. My kids are too young to know how, right now they're still deviceless, obviously. So, but with each generation, there's a set of technology where which that generation adopts, and their mental model behavior also adapts to it. Like look at the number of the amount of hours we used to play physical sports when we were young. Even if we didn't have a ground to play, we'll just play gully cricket or whatever it was, pitti or pittu, I forget the name. But the younger generation is more on their PlayStations or phones and everything, and that's completely fine by them. And their construct of making friends or having friends is more digital and lesser physical as opposed to our generation. So my belief is what will look very weird to us, any generation which has been born and brought up with that technology, for them it's like natural. Like what's wrong with it? They will call us boomers at some point in time.
Yeah. So I think another link which was interesting, what I came across, I knew this, but this is reinforced, which is, I mean, even when you know a placebo is fake, it works. So that's, I mean, for those who don't know placebos are, say, tablets made of salt or sugar. They are used in randomized controlled trials where half of the population gets a real drug, half of the population gets a placebo, and you see what's the difference. But interesting thing is that placebos also have an effect. So if you are, so in this article, it said if you have an emotional distress and you take a placebo, I mean, if you don't know a placebo and doctor gives you something and you feel like it might have an effect, and it has an effect, that makes some sense because you feel you're taking the real thing and your brain could make you feel better. But the crazy thing is that even if you know you're taking a placebo, it works, and nobody knows why is that. You know, this made me go to Amazon. I wanted to buy a placebo for when maybe I'm stressed, um, and you can't buy a placebo on Amazon. There's no placebo. Even if I write
Okay.
placebo pills,
But they wouldn't call it placebo pills, no, they'd call it homeopathy, and I'm guilty of that right now.
you're taking a jab
So
on it. But I feel, I mean, my point is
no,
that
no, I mean
someone should
I'm
launch
taking a
a
jab at
business.
it while using it. So our kids
Maybe,
have been
I
going through
mean,
some allergy problems for a bit, and we tried a whole bunch of allopathy and different things. Finally, we said the last bastion to try is homeopathy, and we, knowing that we don't believe in it fundamentally scientifically, we said, okay, let's try it. What if the placebo works? Because as parents, you'll do anything for your kids. So I'm
yeah.
right now in that mode. So which is why I made the joke that homeopathy is placebo in a way. If it works, then again we'll have to look at the scientific proof. But if it does not, then we at least know placebo also did
Yeah.
not work.
Yeah. I think someone should launch a placebo pill. Just it should literally call placebo pill. In Amazon, they are available. I'm waiting someone to launch them in India. I pop them left, right, and center if they work. Another
So,
thing
but you
I
have to
came
brand it
across,
better. No? You should then call it the happiness pill.
the happiness pill. Yes, contains nothing but salt or sugar, something like that. Yeah. Another thing I came across was this search engine called Find, and it's actually pretty good. It's a search engine for developers, somewhat like ChatGPT, but it pulls the sources, summarizes it. So, for example, you say, "How do I set up LangChain?" And so the crazy thing is that they've indexed all the docs and it's specifically for developers, and it gives very, very detailed answer. And so ChatGPT right now, of course, it hallucinates, it's coming from memory, but this would get you something which is even recent. For example, if you say, I want to install baby AGI, how should I do it? Of course, ChatGPT doesn't have this in its data set, but it would get the sources and give you very step by. And I've been using it since yesterday. I just came across it yesterday, and it's really, really good. You don't
Do you
have
have
to
any idea how they are doing it internally? Do you have any idea of the stack
And of
internally,
course,
how they're
I think
indexing?
they're using GPT-4 for generating answers. The secret sauce is in indexing. I don't know whether using Bing API, because if Bing API has made themselves very, very expensive. I think it's maybe $100 for 1,000 searches or so. It's economically unfeasible for most of the search engines now to use Bing. So they're likely using Google custom search or maybe simply scraping. I don't know, but they're doing a really good job of it. Yeah.
Interesting.
And yeah, another interesting thing was how two teenagers found a new theorem, proof for Pythagorean theorem. In this day and age, when Pythagorean theorem has been there for such a long time, still 2023, two teenagers find a new proof for Pythagorean theorem, and it's pretty long. I've not gone through it, but the interesting bit for me was to keep expecting surprises, even for things you feel are solved. That's a lesson I took from this.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I have a number of things. I think maybe the last thing I'll talk about is getting back to this auto GPT that you were talking about, and basically what's happening under the hood. It combines a couple of things. It combines uh, task creation agent, it combines execution agents, memory, and task prioritization agent. So what's really happening is that this user provides an objective is, for example, help me prepare a deck for for my shoe company, for example, something like this. It's a very high level objective that you give to the system, and what it does is that it generates like a list of tasks. So in earlier variant, if you ask ChatGPT the same question, it'll give you the answer and it'll stop at that, right? That's what's happening. It'll give you the answer and it'll stop at it. But what's it's doing now is there is a loop here where it'll continue to generate a list of tasks. So maybe if you, I mean, it's just like a human would approach, right? You are given like a task, and what you do is you break down into subtasks, and you break subtask into subtasks. So that's exactly what it's doing, this whole loop, and it's ending up prioritizing those tasks so that at all points of time it's working on the top most important task, and memory is there so that the previous task results are in. So in a sense, I think that's the interesting bit, that this is not like a hardcore research. It's gluing together, various different obvious ideas to make something which works so much better than what was there before. I think it's similar to the whole SaaS thing, where in SaaS, you're not really reinventing the wheel, you're not doing hardcore research. Most of the SaaS is at the end of the day an interface on top of database. So you can say that in SaaS, you're doing nothing but putting pretty UI on a database. And the similar thing is
No,
happening in AI.
but the only difference in Paras is in SaaS, not everybody could make SaaS. Like you still need a developer, UI designer, maybe some front end plus back end guy. Here, anybody who's basically using GPT or Chat GPT, they can make this. So that power has been democratized for
Yeah,
majority of small utility tools. So which is where also sort of leads to the question, probably for the next topic on what would be moats around building such applications in AI and SaaS. But back to your point, you're saying something.
Yeah, so I was saying even in SaaS, the difficult bit is not creating. You can go ahead and create many of the SaaS tools out there. The difficult thing is to build a business around it. And it relates to the point you're making, which is all about whether you have distribution, whether you're able to solve problem deeply. So to me, a lot of experiments that are happening in AI is similar to the scripts we used to write, simple Python, Perl, PHP scripts, where it's a cool demo, but taking that demo and converting into a business, I think that's a whole ball game altogether. And that's where the whole entrepreneurial skill comes in, where it's, I think, easy to put out a demo but very hard to convert it into business. And frankly, you need a huge dose of luck to be able to cross from a demo to business, and it's not really in your hands, because so many people are simultaneously putting out these demos. Not everyone will have like a big company. Only few of them will end up converting into companies, and who it could be, I think it's just anybody's guess. And
Right. So just a bit on top of that. So SaaS, if you look at, let's say 2012 till about 2016, 17, each category had probably one or two products, the early days of SaaS. Now each category, by the time you sort of push out your first product into new categories, by next week you'll have like 3 or 4 different products out there. So it's getting extremely commoditized, which is also happening with AI as well. Like every year there's some sort of new innovation, some fundamental, some not so fundamental, some cool demos and everything. But the commoditization of each category and space has been very, very high, both in SaaS now and also probably going to be in AI. The only difference now in AI is now being adopted by the incumbents faster than the upstarts. Like Microsoft has sort of pushed Copilot across most of its product, including VS Code.
yeah.
You have Adobe with Firefly. You have Google Workspace, which already has some sort of AI inbuilt. And before any startup can go and sort of build those things on these platforms, the bigger guys have started distributing it out, and they have very cool demos and whatnot. So
Yeah. To me, I
what
mean,
is the right? Huh.
yeah, this points to me, this points to a future where we are building artisanal software, just like there are artisanal gelato shops, cafes, which serve maybe a neighborhood of 10 people, 20 people. So I don't find it very hard to imagine that in future there'll be teams that are focused on solving problems of just 100 people. And those 100 people share such a unique problem that nobody else is focused on them. Uh, but AI will allow software to be built with such a speed that you can really go deep and solve very, very specific problems that are ignored today, because building software is expensive and you have to solve problems of thousands of people, millions of people. So you can only put out something which is very, very generic. But AI will allow hyper personalized software, almost artisanal, which is custom built for you. So there'll be an AI agent who will be building software just for Pallav, for his use case, his workflow, and that's about it.
Didn't the no code environment or the no code category also sort of promise that?
Yeah, I mean, there's that's it didn't really materialize, I think.
Right. Why? What's your view on that? And what would be the delta between a no code on AI in between to be able to create those hyper personalized
I
software?
think the delta really is AI is writing code. So I mean, code is being super precise, um, and it's
No
just
code
like
also, like it's a visualization. I mean, you're doing your diagrams on top and internally it's generating code, basically your workflow. So there also you're abstracted from the code by a visual interface. Here it's a human interface. So between a visual interface and a human interface, visual interface is slightly more deterministic in output, which you want in a software program. Whereas in a natural language interface, the output will depend on whether your prompt has changed, whether the LLM has been upgraded to a different version, or one of the multiple parameters which would come in, which is non-deterministic in that sense.
Yeah, but of course the flexibility with the I mean, AI is sort of like an amplification of tools you have, right? With so many APIs out there. I mean, AI is like having a very productive assistant who works nonstop for you, who's willing to learn from mistakes, who doesn't really take an off day. So if you give that power to anyone in natural language, which is what's happening, then I think ability to create something new, which is very, very specific, goes way higher versus something like a no code tool where you're still limited by the things that the no code company is making available to you. So I do see like a delta change. I mean, imagine if instead of in your remote team, instead of having actual employees, and that's what I think Sam Altman or someone else was saying, you are just spinning up employees who work at your command. If that's the case, then who knows what you can end up creating. They're willing to do anything you ask them to do.
Like that'd be interesting. I mean, like what Zapier did for APIs or across the SaaS products. If there's a composability of, if somebody is already solved through an agent, and if you can compose different agents from the web to customize for your workflow in natural language through natural language, that would be pretty interesting
That's what's
for.
happening, right, with Hugging GPT, or Jarvis, where they have like an agents, and that's what's happening, where one agent is calling another agent, another all agent is calling another agent. So in some sense, I see this whole parallel world wide web emerging, where instead of data flowing, it's agents talking to each other, and that is a super exciting possibility. where just agents are talking to each other and getting whatever you want to get done. And
So not whatever, because not all SaaS companies or let's say applications of the web will expose their APIs. Or because for the agents to do anything, you have to basically go to data model if the
no,
APIs
but
are
as
not
long as you
available
can
for that
control,
company.
the point is, as long as you can control the browser, which agents are able to do, you don't need an API. Whatever a human can do online on a laptop, and AI will be able to do. And
So
if
that is through what you're talking about. So basically, what a Selenium does by going the imperative way, point click, point click, point click, not directly talking to the APIs or the microservices underlying. Is that
yeah,
what I'm
yeah, that's what
understanding?
I'm saying. Like if whatever a very dedicated person can do over hours and hours, AI can also do. I mean, ultimately, the interface to computer is mouse and laptop and voice
Correct.
and video. That is the interaction we are having with the internet. And if you make that available to an AI, then what difference does it make? That whether you are
Correct. I
doing or
think
an AI is doing.
yeah, I think Adept.ai is doing a pretty good job at it. What they're building as a actions transformer model.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, this is just going to be inevitable where you're going to treat an AI. So that's where I feel physical world is going to be safe haven. People will push more towards meeting other people physically because that's the only place they can know that who they're meeting with is real human in blood and flesh. On
Right.
internet, nobody can tell you whether you're a dog or chat GPT or you're a human.
On the physical world, I'll share an interesting video I recently saw. Give me the permissions back. Those permissions.
Uh, okay. I think you may
So
have it now.
yeah, now I got it. So this is a interesting video I saw recently. This is from Pulkit. I think he's at MIT Research. Yeah. So it talks about why is it harder for AI to open doors than play chess. So I'll just play the intro video.
Is the issue with sound? Sound doesn't come through. Well,
Okay, I'll figure that out. But
yeah,
essentially, I'll show.
maybe we can talk about this next time.
Yeah. So here, when he talks about like all the machines, like all the robots who are trying to open doors, this is what happens. I'll just open.
Yeah, one of my friends was saying he started typing to chat GPT, "You're very good, you're awesome," almost every day, so that when the AI uprising happens, he's in the good books.
What if the model changes from 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 or 5, whatever it is? But coming back to your point on this one, like, so he talks about how physical intelligence is very hard because it's 50,000 years of acquired knowledge in humans, which is not documented. So all our digital knowledge has been documented. So which is why AI has been able to sort of build on top of that.
But a lot
But
of
for physical,
Pallav, physical knowledge is in videos. So I don't think this is as hard a problem as people are imagining. I think the difficult bit is more on I mean, physical knowledge is easy, but the physical mobility that evolution has crafted in terms of our bodies, which are flexible, I think that's a much harder problem to crack than
so
just
not just that.
knowing
So
what's happening in
he
the physical world.
no. So even for example, to lift a cup, the number of instruction sets that go inside a mindset which you're not even aware of, that's massive. To be able to decompose that instruction set is what this video talks about, is a lot of work. So while you can look in a video game, you can move your hand and do this and do that, but to be able to get to that state itself is a lot of instruction set, and obviously there's obviously the
Yeah, but you
physical
know
aspect
what?
of designing.
The AI will figure out that humans are much better at it, and it'll simply pay off humans to do what it needs to do. We'll end up working for these AIs because they'll make a lot of money by giving us what we want in the digital world, and then they'll have us do things in the physical world that they are not able to do until they figure out how to get that. So we're
That is
approaching
true.
a Matrix scenario pretty soon.
Right. I think there was this meme I was seeing where the AI is sitting on a bench and looking at the world while all the humans are walking on the street looking on their phone, and AI is like, "Where is the intelligence really?"
Yeah.
On that note, so I'll share my last screen. Like every time Paras we say we are going to do it for 20-30 minutes, we overshoot by a magnitude.
Yeah.
So this was an interesting thing, just for the sake of fun. Somebody posted this on Twitter. Can you see the screen? I'll just zoom
Yeah,
it
I
again.
can.
So basically, he's taking a dig at all the software companies and saying if their headlines were real, what did it look like? Again, this is a fun jab. This is for Jira. Stop hating your software. Start hating your software project from day one. I have a funny story to talk about it. One of my ex-senior engineers. So we were doing this drinking question game in office. Over a couple of beers, we were all answering, "What would you do if you were a billionaire?" His answer was, I'm going to buy Atlassian and next day shut it off. That's how he hated. This is for Zillow. You can't afford it. Just the tagline.
Yeah.
Then for Salesforce, this is amazing elaborate. Better you, I say. Fuck you. Use Matthew McConaughey instead.
These are good. Pretty
Yeah.
good.
Monday.com, if you have ever been there, our ads will haunt you until the day you die. They retarget you a lot and pretty efficiently. Oh, this one is amazing. Real made up stories about life and business from people you don't know. This one is also interesting.
Apologies in advance. Very good.
Yeah, the other ones are also pretty good. Sketch is actually pretty good as well.
Figma for boomers.
And the below, like, we used to be a big deal.
Wow, some burn.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop at that. There are a whole bunch more. So I think, Paris, let's close on the topics. This one. What plans for Friday evening and weekend?
Yeah, weekend, I just want to not be on the screen at all. So I'm looking forward to just relaxing with a book, reading it, going for a walk. And yeah, I just heard Cubbon Park. They've banned playing sports. They've done a bunch of things in Bangalore. They keep on coming up with these random rules that I don't understand, but I still would want
Did
to.
you hear that justification? We
No,
don't
what's
want couples to go to hidden spots to do whatever they
what's
do
wrong with
because they
that?
can be bit by a cobra or insects. That was their justification.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for
I don't know how much right or wrong.
thanks for having people's safety in mind. But yeah, women plans nothing as such. I just want to unwind with a book, and most likely I'll end up getting on a computer. I know there's so much to hack. I'm hacking around with things constantly, but let's see. What about you, Pallav?
This week is slightly more centered around kids. So today there's a iftar party in the community. Gonna take them there. Tomorrow is a Sufi night, so probably might take kids there. Then Sunday there's a circus in town, Rambo Circus. We'll
Wow,
take them.
doing dad
So
duties.
that, yep, Pooja is away for the weekend. Pooja, my wife. No, but in between, so the friend's friend, he's a musician. He is in Bangalore at Windmills itself. So probably tomorrow afternoon or probably one of the nights. Plays amazing. So we just sit over some beers, keeps on playing, and both of them love playing and jamming together. So it becomes a really awesome scene. So yeah, mix of
Fantastic.
all of that.
Yeah, great. Have a fantastic weekend and see you next week, Pallav.
See you, man. And thank you all for listening. Let us know what you thought about it, what you would want us to discuss, and
Yeah,
anything you want to share with us.
and if you're enjoying it, if you're not, we're boring you, let us know. We'll
Yes,
try
that
to
too.
Bye bye.
Bye, Paris.